So my friend Terry is 79. In 1959, she was a junior in college. She left a party with a male friend from her physics class. Jim had invited her to a diner to talk over a cup of coffee and a slice of pie. Terry remembers being jittery and excited. Not long after driving away from the party, Jim pulled his car off to the side of the road. He grabbed Terry, climbed on top of her, pulled up her skirt, and raped her in the passenger seat. When he was done, he opened the door and shoved Terry out onto the pavement. Jim drove away. Terry was left alone on a cold, snowy New Hampshire road in complete disbelief and ashamed. She dropped out of college, and for more than 50 years, she never told anyone what happened that night, not even her husband of 45 years. As a sociology professor and a director of a university research center focused on sexual violence prevention and response, people regularly tell me their own accounts of sexual assault. And as with Terry, I am often the first person that they've told. You might think mainstream media's coverage of the problem of sexual assault is putting an end to this problem. And if so, you would be wrong. Each year, 1 in 5 women entering college will be a victim of campus sexual assault. These numbers have not changed since 1983, when the first campus sexual violence prevalence studies were published. That's approximately 246,000 newly graduated female high school seniors who enter college this fall. Let me say that again. That's approximately 250,000 of these young women who enter college this fall. That is the equivalent of filling an NFL stadium almost 4 times. The physical and mental health consequences of sexual violence include depression, drug abuse, and suicide. This is well researched. And yet, during a conversation with a woman I'll call Anne, I realized how little we know about the economic costs of campus sexual violence, how campus sexual violence impacts a victim's education, career trajectory, and earning potential. Anne is now in her 30s. She was raped during her junior year in college. Like many victims, she suffered from nightmares and struggled to maintain her grades. In an effort to remain enrolled in her university, Anne changed her major from neurobiology to early childhood education, a major that Anne perceived as less demanding. I asked Anne about her decision to change her major, and she said something that I have never forgotten. Sharyn, she said, as a teacher, I help severely disabled children and their families to have a voice because I know what it is like to be voiceless. In the aftermath of the rape, I felt voiceless as I tried to seek justice for the crime committed against me. Brookings Institute researchers estimate that students who graduate with a bachelor's degree in biology earn approximately $1 million more over their lifetime compared to students who graduate with a bachelor's in early childhood education. While the role of educators are vital, and we all know educators are woefully undercompensated, Anne's dream was to be a neurobiologist. As a sociologist, I study the economic costs of campus sexual violence. In our research, with campus sexual violence victims ages 22 to 65, the clear majority suffered significant economic and human capital losses. As one survivor, Sophia, explained, the sexual assault perpetrated against her during her sophomore year in college was all she could think about, whether she was in class with friends or just trying to study. Sophia is now 32. She works as a homeless shelter staff member. Before the assault, she had planned on pursuing both a master's and a doctorate in psychology. Instead, she stopped her studies. Like 1/3 of our participants, Sophia never completed college. At the time of our interview, she was still 4 credits short of her bachelor's degree. We all lose when 1/3 of people who are assaulted do not finish college. And as for those who stay in college, it is not easy. 2/3 of our participants describe the negative impact the campus sexual violence had on their academic performance. As one survivor, Brianna, explained, Brianna was a first-generation college student. She had a 5-year full-ride academic scholarship conditional on her maintaining her GPA. Following a sexual assault her sophomore year, Brianna's GPA plummeted from a 3.8 to a 1.0. Over and over, our participants described the negative impact the sexual assault had on their education and career goals. Many described being underemployed and moving among low-wage positions with limited access to health care. Another participant, Whitney, she had prepared for a career in music, but she told us that the unpredictability of the PTSD that she suffered from as a result of her campus sexual assault made her take a break from her musical ambitions for almost 4 years. Whitney's trajectory is similar to over half of our participants who described a disruption in the timeline to obtain their degree. Additionally, Whitney said, I don't know how I can work in a male-dominated industry, the music industry, because she couldn't talk to men without panicking. In the aftermath of the assault, Whitney was no longer comfortable performing to crowds of strangers, something she had loved before the assault. I've just shared 5 accounts from our research, but as I've discussed, nearly 250,000 women entering college this fall will leave with their own similar accounts. We've all read stories in the media describing a perpetrator who's expelled from their university, sent to jail, or placed on a sex offender registry. And defenders of the perpetrator note the unfair economic burden that these punishments place on a perpetrator. Yet this is not the same for victims. The lifetime economic losses that sexual violence victims suffer are not quantified, and they're not accounted for in our public discourse. We can no longer afford the costs of campus sexual violence. No one should pay an average of $50,000 per year in college tuition when 20% of female and 6% of male students will be a victim of sexual violence. So what can we do? There are teams like mine around the country at the cutting edge of understanding what makes a difference in preventing sexual assault. So here are a few ideas. If you purchase a car for $50,000, there are lemon laws to protect your investment. Yet there are no policies that require colleges and universities to reimburse students for lost tuition costs following a campus rape. Those institutions that repeatedly fail to protect students from campus sexual assault are failing the most basic lemon law tests. For a small number of high-profile cases, colleges and universities allocate substantial amounts for legal settlements with campus sexual violence victims. These payouts, typically in the hundreds of thousands or more, could be invested in the administration of effective campus sexual violence prevention strategies. Campuses could invest their money in preventing crime rather than averting lawsuits. We can also teach bystander intervention strategies. Strategies that move the focus away from victims and perpetrators to the role that all community members have in preventing sexual violence. Bystander intervention strategies teach people how to recognize and intervene in dangerous or potentially dangerous situations, and offer instruction for providing empathy and support for male, female, and non-binary victims in the crime aftermath. In addition to positively impacting a victim's healing, this empathy and support increase the likelihood that victims will seek help and report the crime committed against them. So here's the bottom line. Victims of sexual violence suffer unimaginable personal and financial loss. And it is time we recognize this, while also recognizing that society pays a heavy price. We lose the full intellectual and economic contribution that these individuals might have made. How different would these women's lives have been if they had been able to pursue their original education and career goals? What music was not written? What gene was not discovered? What alternative energy source was not harnessed? What books were not written? What teacher never had the chance to inspire? These accounts, and millions of others, may be yours, demonstrate the tremendous social and economic costs of campus sexual violence. Their losses are our losses, society's losses too. And that makes campus sexual violence everyone's problem. We cannot afford to look away. Thank you.